Welcome to the London Open Backgammon 2012. It's London. It's 2012. From 128 players to just one. It's the London Open. Coming up, we catch up with the backgammon columnist for The Independent, Chris Bray.
The weirdest one involved a game of backgammon for the highest stake possible.
We learn what players think is the best thing about backgammon.
There are so many facets to the game, it's incredible, you know.
And we find out who made it into the last 16. What does the London Open coming to London mean for you and fellow London backgammon players?
Well, most of the time we have to travel to play backgammon, so actually I can play in this tournament, I can go home at night, so that's actually pretty rare, and we need more backgammon in the capital basically. So obviously we've got this, and then we've got the big boys coming in November for the $1 million Playboy tournament, so backgammon's coming back to London maybe.
Excellent, and obviously as you mentioned there, backgammon now is quite international. Do you see the same players at all the international tournaments?
By and large, you do see the same players because there's a small group of players who are just slightly better than everybody else, and these are the guys who consistently see winning in tournaments. It happens in America. It happens slightly less in Europe because the travel's maybe a little bit more complex. So, you know, I don't go to Denmark every Easter because my day job gets in the way. So, yeah, you do see the same guys, and it's nice to see them.
Are there ever any problems with languages when you're travelling around Europe?
No, because it's backgammon is a universal language, so you can speak without speaking, so to speak. And increasingly, one must castigate our nation, but everybody speaks English anyway. You know, on the internet, 10 years' time, it'll just be English and Chinese. Backgammon, maybe the same.
Are there a lot of Chinese players? Because obviously Chinese players are now making inroads in sports like snooker. Are there any Chinese players playing backgammon?
I've only seen a couple. There's a lot of Japanese, obviously, so Moshi, world champion a couple of years ago. Basically, backgammon flourishes where there's someone to drive it. So that's happened in Japan, it happened in Denmark a long time ago with Chris Turnell. It's happened here with people like Mike Main and Michael Crane, who drives Bieber. So, and in strange places like Flint in the US, because Carol Joy Cole has been a fundamental driver of the game for so long. So you need people to make it happen, you need tournament organisers. It doesn't happen on its own.
So do you find that backgammon kind of clusters around individuals in different areas?
Yeah, it does. So you can't go to Manchester and be guaranteed a game, or Birmingham, but if you're a backgammon player, you'll know where you can find a game in the UK when you're travelling. So I went to Australia last summer, you know, just look it up on the net, go and find the local organiser, go and have a game.
And you phone up, do you, and meet them in a basement somewhere to get the backgammon board out?
Well, actually in Australia they sort of ran a monthly tournament and coincided when I was there, so that was good. You know, and you find these guys on the net basically. There's a site called Chicago Backgammon Links, which contains everything you ever want to know about backgammon. Anybody you ever want to see, meet, anything you want to buy, read. Yeah, it's all in one site, so it's fantastic.
And Chris, you're a backgammon journalist, so you're always looking out for the backgammon stories. What's your favourite backgammon story?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. Sadly, probably the weirdest one involved a game of backgammon for the highest stake possible, which was a very strange story which came out of Russia, where someone came out of prison, got a lift from a guy in a taxi, and they said, let's play backgammon. They did, and the guy said he didn't have any money. He said, don't worry, if you lose, I'll take your life. And unfortunately, that's what happened.
Murder by backgammon.
Murder by backgammon.
Things like that don't happen in the UK.
They don't, but if you go back 40 years, one of the most famous cause célèbre in England was Lord Lucan. Lord Lucan murdered his nanny and disappeared, and his problems all started with playing backgammon and chemin de fer. He had 2 weeks where he won a phenomenal amount of money, gave up his day job, decided to play games, and actually he wasn't that bright, and his debts just mounted, and it all ended very sadly, unfortunately.
How do you plan your backgammon columns?
My backgammon column is a really good question. So what happens is I play both online and live, and whenever I come to an interesting position, I'll record it. During the night while I'm sleeping, my computer does the analysis for me, and then if the position passes the test of being interesting, I'll find a way to get it into the column. The column comprises either straight backgammon instruction, also book reviews and things like that, but I also have a cast of fictitious characters who help me, which are drawn, surprisingly enough, from the very strange characters that you meet in real life. So Barry Big Play, most people can guess who that is, and Quentin Quick Cube. And I introduced the Dowager Duchess a few years ago purely because I wanted to use the word lorgnette in a column, but she stuck because everyone liked her. And then I use characters from history, so Holmes and Watson and Wooster and Jeeves.
Have you ever upset anyone by writing about them in your column?
No, because I tend to write about the good things they've done rather than the bad things. And actually, if I'm writing about a position where someone's made a really bad blunder, I check it with them first. So they become anonymous if they don't want to admit their mistake.
And at the London Open tournament, who do you think is going to win?
Probably out of a field of 64, there'll be 7 or 8 who'd say I could put pretty good money on them to reach quarter-final stage. But as we've seen in backgammon, it doesn't always happen. And here we have reasonable length matches, so the luck element will be diminished, but that won't stop a couple of people getting through, surprisingly. Even in the World Championship final, to 25 points. You know, once every 5, 6, 7 years, maybe someone who's really not that good will manage to sneak through.
Thanks, Chris, for your backgammon news and words of wisdom, and I hope you have a great time in the tournament.
Thank you very much.
I love the competitive element. I'm not really a money player. I like to put an entry fee, and then I just like to compete against anybody, really.
The game, as I've said, is so engrossing psychologically, intellectually.
The luck elements, the fact that anyone can win, and there's such excitement.
When I'm doing it, I'm not worrying about what I've got to do on Monday, you know, what am I going to eat for dinner. I'm in the moment, and the little bit of excitement that comes from the monetary payoff, that can be a very pleasing experience.
On the first level, it's a very simple game in that initially backgammon was just played as a checker game with no doubling cube. And so moving your checkers is relatively straightforward. The complexity comes in when you introduce the doubling cube, and so you're having to make checker play in terms of looking for gammons, even backgammons if you're very lucky.
There's so many facets to the game, it's incredible, you know, pattern recognition skills, the mathematical skills, statistical abilities that you need, the risk-reward ratio calculations that you have to do across, you know, over the board, and there's time pressures when you're playing with a chess clock as well. So there's a great deal to backgammon.
There are so many different factors, from counting the pips, the number of squares you have left to go, to what might happen if he gets this really lucky roll.
And so that changes the dynamic massively and makes it from a relatively simple mathematical game to a very complex game of understanding the odds and understanding the right decisions to take at the right time.
The gambling is just one element of it. I do enjoy the gambling side of it. It's a hobby. It's a hobby that, you know, pays me a bit of pocket money, so I love it.
For me, it's a real break from teaching, from stressing about the political situation in the Middle East.
Even though it might not look that exciting to a non-player, when you follow the game and you know what's going on, it really is quite riveting.
It's a test of your wits. You never know what's going to come up in front of you. You have a lot of very tough decisions to make. I've been playing for quite a while now, so I guess probably 60–70% of the positions are relatively straightforward. Then all of a sudden you get a brainstorm and you have to look at it and you think, God, I really don't know how to play this move.
The idea that I could beat the world champion because I'm good enough to have a lucky day and beat him, as has happened to me once or twice.
It's my favourite game. My favourite sport is skiing, My favourite board game is Backgammon. If I could only ever do one of the two, it would probably be Backgammon.
The London Open tournament is played as a knockout, so a massive 64 players go out in the first round. They're joined by another 32 in the second round and another 16 in the third round, bringing us to the last 16.
Earlier on, I spoke to Stuart Mann about his experiences in the early rounds.
So Stuart, who did you play in the first round?
I played Chris Jeans. He's a St Albans player. Pretty strong player, not much difference between the two of us, I think. And I managed to win that from 4-0 behind, but it was quite a close game.
Have you played him before?
He reminded me that we played in Brighton about 12 years ago, but I couldn't really remember. I asked him who won, he said I'd won, but I didn't remember it, to be honest.
Do you find you tend to come up against the same players in tournaments?
Quite a lot, yeah, because you do see them around the circuit quite a lot, although not so much Chris, but we had actually played, yeah.
So, congratulations for round one.
One round, yeah, now we're coming to round two.
Exactly, how did it go?
Lost to Martin Barkwell, made a big mistake in the first game with a doubling decision. I don't know why, I just had a bit of a brain. But afterwards he ran away with the game anyway, so I lost 11-1 to Martin, and he's a strong player. I've played him many times. So that was me out.
Is it hard to recover once you make a mistake?
Your mind's a little bit off. I think probably the best players, it shouldn't matter. Sometimes it does affect me. I don't think it really did, but it did perhaps play a little bit on my mind. Not sure how I played, wasn't recorded. We took a couple of positions down, so I'll find out about those later. But I think that's my next step, actually, to record some games with a little video camera, and so that would help me look at what I've done wrong, really. But actually, Martin would admit he got the dice. He ran away with it 11-1, and that was my tournament finished.
Of the 128 players who started, 112 are now out. Their chances of being the London Open Backgammon champion are dashed. We're down to the last 16, and here they are.
Chris Purchase, Brian Lever, Martin Barkwell, Barry McAdam, Marcus Wrench, Tony Fawcett, Edward Layton, Andrea De Zandatoni, Tom Duggan, Danny Cohen, Neil Smith, George Hall, Katja Spillum, John Barnes, George Miltiadu, and Lorenzo Rinaldo. Next time, I chat to backgammon giant Paul Weaver.
You need to be sharp, you need to be studying, you need to have a lot of positions sharp on your mind.
We ask the players, why is backgammon a male-dominated game?
I think I have a real answer for you here, and I'm not going to try to shirk the matter with a politically correct platitude.
And we find out who made it into the semi-finals. Join us then. If you're looking for a backgammon club near you, take a look at backgammoninlondon.com. If you're based in London, there are weekly tournaments in either Camden or Fulham, or you can find links on the website to clubs elsewhere in the country or even in other parts of Europe or the rest of the world.